Welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns.
Hello and welcome to Keto Life Support. This is Kim Howerton with episode number 150. And this week's episode is going to be a short one. I'm coming home from Low Carb Denver, and I had a fabulous time. And I thought I would share some insights, both about the conference and my experience at the conference. So this is just a little catch up, what I've been up to, some of my thoughts, and some recap of the things that I'm keeping in mind coming out of the conference. So first of all, it was lovely to see everybody. I really love the social aspect of conferences. It's totally true. You can watch them online and have a wonderful learning experience. And if you ever can't go to a conference, I really do recommend getting the online version so that you can watch the speakers. But if you can ever go in person, it's totally worth it to shake hands, hug people, meet people, realize, oh, that person's really tall. Oh, that person's really short. Like you just are like, oh, I only see these people online. That's really interesting. And you get a total different impression of them when you get to meet people in person. So I just wanted to say, put a little plug. If you ever get a chance to go to a conference, try it, do it. Okay, so I'm going to pull up the agenda. I'm not going to list everything because it will take forever, but some of the highlighted speakers I want to mention. Dr. Brett Shear, always great. He talked about therapeutic nutritional ketosis. He used to be on his own. He's a preventative cardiologist. So, no slouch there. But then he was part of the Diet Doctor crew and did the hosting for their podcast. He's since, I think, left Diet Doctor, and now he's working on some other projects, specifically, I think, around like mental health, which is super interesting. But I love Dr. Brett. And then we heard from Thomas DeLauer, who you might know from YouTube fame. And he was talking specifically to men about hormones and athletics. We heard from Lane Norton, who some of you may be like, who? And others you may be like, I hate that guy. And others you might be like, he hates us. Because he's thought of as kind of anti-low carb. He's not anti-low carb. He's very, quote, evidence-based. And so what ends up happening is he debunks a lot of myths on all sorts of sides, and that ends up pissing some people off, really in every camp. So he spoke about logical fallacies. There was no science involved. Well, unless you count linguistics as a science. So ways in which our arguments can be broken, basically, was what he was talking about. No like health science on it, though. Andreas Einfeld of Diet Doctor talked about sort of his new, Diet Doctor's got a new satiety index thing on it. I have some questions about it. I have some criticisms about it, but I think it's a good thing to know about. I think knowing about what foods do we statistically find produce higher satiety helpful, but I think sometimes when you look at creating some type of heuristic, some type of guideline, it can be really challenging because we're very individual from person to person. So I think looking to eat in a way where you feel really satisfied is really important, super important. No success will be had unless you feel satiety from your food. But I think that is a journey that we're all on learning for ourselves. So good start there, but not necessarily something I'm like 100%, this is all you need. No. Then we had a panel, Where is Nutrition Heading? We had some speakers on that. Then we talked about, again, I'm skipping some who I didn't see, or we had Chris Palmer, MD. He is very much at the forefront of brain health. He's got a book out about it in terms of treating, preventing various types of mental disorders, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. And I don't mean prevent, like when I say preventing, it might be preventing some of the more advanced symptoms or putting things in remission. but how that relates to metabolic health, always super interesting to hear from him. There was a thyroid talk from Amy Berger. Love that. Amy is the best. We had, I'm just trying to remember who else I wanted to mention. Again, if I omit someone, it's not necessarily because I don't think they had good information. It's just hard to keep up with everything. We had Nina Teichel's, always interesting to hear about nutritional guidelines, sort of a more policy-based. Nadir Ali with high-fat diets and cardiovascular risk. So that's always interesting. And Dave Feldman, who I love, talked about ApoB and talked a lot about his upcoming studies that he's doing. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff on the horizon. So look for cholesterolcode.com, Dave Feldman, and look into what's going on there. We had David Diamond, always an interesting talk, and Dorian Brenow from Keto Mojo, always my favorite keto tester. There was, that day I ran a session with my good friend Siobhan Huggins and Amber O'Hearn about how to become your own scientist with your own body. We had I didn't hear this person, but it looked like a good talk. So I'm going to listen to it later, but a woman named Mariella, who talked about treating diabetes with a new paradigm. And Cynthia Turlow, who you might know talks a lot about fasting, talked about insulin sensitivity occurring in overweight populations. So that was definitely interesting. Peter Bruckner, who is a fabulously hilarious Australian, who talked about chronic disease and diet. And Sean Baker was there to talk about carnivore a bit. The next day, we had the morning talk. Okay, I don't know how to say this man's name, which is really distressing. But I think it's Quadwo, and his last name starts with a K, and he is fabulous. I'll put his name in the show notes. I'm so sorry. I literally didn't hear him introduced, and rather than completely butcher his name, I would like to give it the respect it deserves, and so say it correctly. But he is an ER physician, and he talked about COVID and metabolic health issues and why it's so important that people be metabolically healthy and the outcomes they saw in the ER. Very interesting. We heard from Dr. Jamie Seaman on metabolic health for women. She talked a bit about menopause. And then Gabrielle Lyon, who we might know from protein fame, talked about the importance of protein. Ken Berry, a guy that nobody knows about, but I think, you should look him up. That was sarcasm. Talked about the proper human diet. Nadia Pataguano from the fasting method talked about time-restricted eating. And then we had Mark Cucuzella, who's an MD, who's also a runner, talked about the magic of zone 2. A super interesting talk from Amy Goss about pediatric non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and some studies they're doing on that. They did a short study and found very good results with a low-carb diet, not even a keto diet, but a low-carb diet reversing pediatric fatty liver. And they're now doing a bigger study. And that was pretty much the speakers and the talks, and super fun, super engaging, loved the experience. Here was my personal experience, I will say. I know something about myself. I cannot, and most of my clients can't, by the way, but I cannot be a grazer. I can't fly by the seat of my pants with food. Sure, I can do it for a day. I'm not gonna melt like a witch in The Wizard of Oz. It's fine. I can totally handle it. But 3 days of not really prioritizing quiet, centered meal eating time. I don't mean I have to be like in a dark room. I just mean sitting down at a table, eating a meal, right? Not, grabbing something on the run, having like a snack versus a meal, that kind of thing. Totally not good for me. By the end of the day, I feel kind of gross. I feel both hungry and full. I feel confused. Not good. I'm not built for snacking, because snacking in my body just turns into, I never know I'm full. I never hit full satiety. And so I want to snack all day long. Bad news bears for me. And like I said, for most people I know, actually, to be honest. So the thing I didn't do was say, okay, I'm going to skip that session so that I can go and have breakfast or lunch, like a solid meal. And then I believed people would take care of me, which they won't. Like that sounds really mean. People will take care of you if they know you and they're committed to you. There are people in my life that will 100% take care of me and my dietary needs. An organization will not. So, we were told there was going to be breakfast 2 days. And when will I learn my lesson? Never, apparently. And I was like, oh, breakfast, great. They're going to have like eggs and bacon out or sausage or things like that out for us at the break when they said there's breakfast. And the breakfast was some chia seed pudding in a teeny little glass. So what amounts to like 2 tablespoons of chia seed pudding. Not that I would call chia seed pudding really breakfast, more like desserty. There were hard-boiled eggs, but not enough for how many hard-boiled eggs I would need. And yogurt and fruit, which again would have been okay, but the yogurts that the hotel was supplying were not particularly low-carb yogurts. So I looked at the breakfast stuff and I was like, no. And I don't mean to be super critical. I just mean, hey guys, if you're trying to take care of yourself with food, you need to take care of yourself. You need to depend on yourself or somebody who's committed to you, like a partner or a family member who actually that they can take care of this for you. So again, I should have learned this lesson by now. You can't trust when it says something provided. Don't. You got to know, okay, what does that mean? What are you serving? What are we having? And so I should have, at that point during the break, when I saw that breakfast wasn't going to do it for me, but it was supplied, I should have gone to the place where the restaurant and had breakfast. Or at that point, it was basically brunch. But I was oh no, I'll be fine because I can be fine. I totally can go the whole day and be totally fine just on coffee and stuff. But by the end of the day, I'm I feel like today didn't go as well as I want. It's not optimal for me. So did I learn my lesson on the second day? No, I didn't. I was I was fine yesterday skipping. I'll just eat lunch. But then I forgot that on the second day, I was running a session during lunch. So again, I skipped lunch. And finally that afternoon, I was basta, enough. And I went to my room and I ordered a bunless burger for room service. And I was oh, good, I feel better now. And it just came home in that moment. I got to take care of myself. So for me, the 2 things I need to make sure that I take care of myself around when traveling are sleep and food. Now, I did pretty good with sleep, but I didn't take very good care of myself with food until I finally was this is ridiculous. The reason you feel off kilter, I felt off kilter. I felt energetically weird. I felt both hungry and sort of nauseous at the same time. I felt and then the craziness started to happen. Because if I'm off with my food, my body stuff gets ignited. So I went I started feeling really self-conscious. I started feeling fat. I started feeling my clothes didn't fit well. All this nutty things happen. And I'm oh, I'm not taking care of myself. When I take care of myself, I'm on much more solid footing. I feel good about my choices. When I don't take care of myself, even for a couple of days, it's really easy for me to spin off into very unhinged land. And so not all of you are quite as sensitive as me. I am a very sensitive princess, but it's really just, I am 46 years old. It is time for me to really claim the space and say yeah, you know what it takes to take care of yourself, Kim. You got to put that priority 1. You got to put your own oxygen mask on before you can put anyone else's on. And I'm just I'm lying in the sand, putting my foot down with myself. No more. Basta. Enough. No more acting like I can just fly by the seat of my pants unless there's an emergency. If there's an emergency, I can totally do it. But why do I want my trip to be ruined by this just offness that I don't have to experience? So that was my personal learning. I used to travel all the time, and I got into my ways of knowing how I had to do things on travel. And since kind of coming back from our lockdown situations, I've been traveling a lot less. And the things that I know that work for me, that I need to do, my absolutes, my do not pass go, must have, hard no to avoid, I've been a little flimsier with those and I've suffered for it. And so that's my learning. No more flimsy there. I got to take care of myself first before anything else. So if you're planning a trip at some time in the future, I think it would be useful for you to think, what are the things that if I make sure these things happen, usually it's just a handful of things. If I make sure these few things happen, everything else is going to go well. make sure those things are scheduled into your day. And so that's my commitment to any future traveling, that I schedule those things into a day so that I know I'm getting everything I need out of my experience. All right, guys, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed this little catch up after coming home from Denver, where it was freezing. Not that I was outside much. So I enjoyed my time in Denver. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I will talk to you next week.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're part of the Keto fam. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.